On your screen is the number one player from Greece, Nikolas Theodorou. He takes on the world champion Domaraju Gukesh. Gukesh had a very tough game in round number 5, the previous round, by losing to Abhimanyu Mishra. And now in the 6th round, he will be looking to strike back with the white pieces. He's currently on 3 points out of 5, and a win here will get him back on track. His opponent, Theodorou, has had a decent run until now. 3 out of 5 for him as well is pretty good. And you can see Gukesh calmly adjusting all his pieces, getting ready for the clash. The Grand Swiss is a very important event in the chess calendar, having 2 spots to the candidates. Gukesh, of course, does not need to be there being the world champion, but he just wants to be playing these strong open events and proving that he is the best classical player in the world. A handshake here and off we go. Gukesh opens the game with pawn to e4. And Nikolas goes e5. Knight to f3, attacking the pawn on e5. And black plays knight to f6, the Petroff defense. White takes, knight takes on e5. And black plays the pawn to d6. Gukesh brings his knight back to f3. And now knight takes e4. The Petrov is considered to be one of the most solid openings out there. Pawn to d4 by Gukesh. And Nikolas plays pawn to d5. The bishop comes out to d3. And now the bishop comes out to d6. You can see Nepo on the adjoining board. He is one of the biggest experts in the Petrov. Short castles by Gukesh. And black castles as well. Pawn to c4 to destabilize the knight in the center. And c6 is the main move here. He plays it. And Gukesh pushes the pawn to c5. This is lesser played move, which is the reason why Theodorou takes some time. He goes bishop c7. And Gukesh is well prepared. He brings his knight out to c3. This could very well be his world championship match preparation. Bishop to f5 after 24 minutes of thought. And now knight to g5. A very interesting move, because if you take on g5, I take the bishop on f5. That's Gukesh's idea. Gukesh plays the move, gets up, knight takes c3 taken here. And now b takes c3. Seems like the right decision here. Of course, you can't take here. Your queen is hanging. So takes back, b takes c3. And now Nikolas can take here, but he goes queen f6. And Gukesh, still in his preparation, goes g4. This time after 18 minutes of thought. By the way, this move, knight g5, was the first new move of the game. Until then, there were a few correspondence games that had reached there. Bishop takes d3 taken. And now queen takes d3, threatening a checkmate on h7, which is quickly stopped by queen g6. Because if you went g6, queen h3, and Gukesh is better here. So queen g6 takes, and you take back with the h pawn. He takes back. And what we reach here is still an equal position, but it seems like white has some activity. He can get in with the rook here, an open file here. So the knight jumps to a6, connecting the rooks. And Gukesh, if he jumps in with this rook, there is rook f8 when the rook is threatening to come in there. So here he goes rook to b1, putting pressure on the b7 pawn. And now Theodorou plays pawn to b6. The rook comes up to b3, now threatening to go to a6. That's the key idea here. Rook fe8. Nikolas is taking his chances here. He realizes that Gukesh is coming at him on the queen side. He needs to create some inroads here. He's now threatening a check. There's no time to waste. If you go like bishop e3, then knight b8 and the knight can be rerouted. So Gukesh goes rook a3, attacking the knight, giving up his bishop with a check. King must come up to g2. And now rook takes c1. You can see Gukesh has 1 hour 18 minutes while Nikolas has 31 minutes. Rook takes a6 and Gukesh is pressing here slightly. Bishop d8. The knight can drop back and you will see that a7 pawn would be hanging. He comes back with his knight to f3. And Theodorou now plays king to f8. Rook takes on a7. It's important to take back. B takes c5 now. And Gukesh, if he pins here, the king comes up. So he jumps in with the knight, threatening knight c6. In fact, threatening rook a8 and then knight c6. Bishop comes out to f6. Such solid play by black. Like Gukesh is trying to press, but oh, rook takes f7. The f7 pawn was also under attack. Now you have to be careful as white, because king e8, and now the threat is bishop e5 and you lose the rook. So Gukesh must tread very carefully. Maybe rook c7 makes a lot of sense. He goes rook to a7. I wonder what Gukesh has on his mind, because somewhere, if you think about it, after, yes, rook takes c3, the threat is bishop takes. In fact, he could have even started with bishop e5, d5, rook c3. These clumps of pawn look dangerous, but Gukesh had calculated rook g7 was better for him. So here a check, king comes up, and now Gukesh takes the pawn with a check. King comes to d7. Again, if king d6, there was rook a6. So king d7, knight e5 check, and he takes on e5. Gukesh risking a bit here, because now black has two passers. d4 pushed by Theodorou. We are at move 31. He has 7 minutes. Gukesh goes f4. Gukesh also has his pawns rushing down the board. An exciting endgame. Pawn to d3. And now Gukesh still has many moves that win for him. He cuts the king off, threatening rook d6 check. Pawn to c4. The pawns are just 2 steps away or 3 steps away from queening. And now he blunders with rook a7. King f2 was the only defensive move. If you went king f2 here, it was still defensible because you bring your king into the defense. But after check now, king c6 is winning for black. Can Theodorou find it? He goes king e8. And Gukesh gives a check. Rook a8 check here. King comes up to e7. Gives another check. He comes back king e8, rook check. And he comes up again, and Gukesh writes down, looks at the score sheet. Can he claim a threefold repetition? He says, I'm going to give a check on a7, offering a draw. Opponent is unsure. The way you do it is basically you write down the move you're going to make, pause the clock and call the arbiter. And Gukesh looks at the score sheet. He's looking that he is given check 3 times, and so he pauses the clock and he calls the arbiter. There are no real arbiters around, and so he gets up from the board, tries to find the arbiter there, and he calls one of the arbiters and says, I'm going to play rook a7 check and I'm claiming a threefold repetition. The problem here is that first time the king was on d7. If you look at this carefully here, that's what Theodorou says. First time my king was on d7, second time, then. So for example, this was the first check, the king is here. The second check, king was on e7, then king was on e7, and now when Gukesh gives a check, it's only repeating 3 times. So rook a7, and it is not a threefold repetition here. So well, Gukesh has made a claim, but it is an incorrect one, as the arbiter uses the mobile app to show Gukesh that it's not a threefold repetition, and Gukesh of course agrees to it. The arbiter will add 2 minutes to his clock. Here the rook is put back on a8. And rook a7 check given. King comes back to d8 now. You see that Theodorou knows that he has nothing to lose here. He can actually change the move. He comes up king d7, rook a7 check. You will see that 2 times checks have happened with rook a7, king d7, 2 times with king on e7, and now they've reached move number 40. Gukesh and his opponent get 50 extra minutes. He shouldn't go king d7 now, then it would be a draw, or king e7. Both would end in a draw with rook a7, but king c7 is the winning move here. So Nikolas comes back, somehow navigated those threefold repetitions, things that happened there, and he's calculating, and he goes king c7. So the game continues, and Gukesh plays a check. The king comes up to c6. Now whose pawns are stronger, because white pawn is also rushing down the board with e6, e7, but somehow you can notice that the black rook can stop the pawns from the e file. And now all of a sudden, if you see, Gukesh, who's calculating here, rook to d6, realizes that he's just utterly lost. Check. And the threat is d2, c3, rook c1 and queen. It's as straightforward as that. And with the realization sinking in, Gukesh understands that he has gone a bit too far. And sometimes there's nothing much you can do in such positions now. Look at this. You can go king f3, but then d2. You can push the pawn, but your rook is hanging. So you need to go down the board. Go c3, e6, rook c1, e7. I'm about to queen, but rook e1. I stop your queen. If you queen, I take it, rook takes, and d1 queen. So black wins. So this entire sequence is a very tricky one. So this is the live board position, king g2, and you can see Gukesh. Something was missed by him. I think he felt like it's going to end in a draw somehow, but and this is the moment where chess players have it the most difficult. You know, they've actually played an entire game, they've tried to find different variations, but then they've missed something, and suddenly everything goes out of control. And generally Gukesh does not emote so much on the chessboard, but well, this one, 2 back-to-back losses, is a tough pill to swallow here. He's thinking there. Well, he had 1 hour 6 minutes before this move. And look at Theodorou in the background. He's walking around. He knows that he has the win in the bag. It will be his first win over a world champion in classical chess. Well, Gukesh can either resign here or make some moves. And he plays his king to f3, and he does it with 57 minutes on the clock. Just simply d2 played here. And the rook goes down to d8. c3. Black's moves are so simple here. Just moving the pawns on autopilot here. e6. Gukesh trying to make a queen. Rook c1 played. And I must say that this game that Theodorou has played here is a model game for Petroff Defence, I must say. And Gukesh resigns here. Theodorou wins. And why is it a model game? Is because Black just kept control, did not give White the advantage, and White over pushed, and Black scored the win. A great win for the Greek #1 player.